Well, at this point, we just have to lose sense of time and just
Right.
not worry about it, because it's always something. One of the sad things actually for me was that before getting completely off subject was Betty White dying before she hit 100, because I was really looking forward to that.
If I can just say something very strange about that is, so the day before that news came out, I think an episode of Golden Girls came on or something. And I was like, man, is Betty White still alive? I was like, there's no way. There's no way. And then the next day, the news broke, and I'm like, oh my God. I put some bad energy out there. So that was
well, no, all that means your intuition is right on point. That's crazy. So Shelby, I first met you at the annual Florida Justice event where you were one of the speakers, and you made an immediate impact on me. I was sitting there. I actually had come to listen to Chris Searcy because he's just like this incredible speaker. And, I sat down, and then, I saw you come on stage and do a presentation. You're a very effective public speaker, and, you have great energy, great clarity. Most importantly, you come across like you're very, very driven, which I say this all the time on the podcast. It's very refreshing to see the new generation of lawyers coming and rising, and that don't carry the old baggage, the old industry conditioning, and are ready to prove themselves and break records. And I've had some incredible young lawyers that have done incredible things. Tell me a little bit about, yourself. Like, did you always know you'd be a lawyer? And, how did your education sort of lead you to law school, and then, being a personal injury attorney today?
It seems like a really simple question, but I think it's pretty complicated, because I think that when you find yourself at a place in life, at least for me, I try to look back and make sense of how I got here, and, say that it was all supposed to happen and this is where I knew I was going to end up. But the reality is it really isn't true. To trace back my steps, it would be almost impossible. But, there's certain points in life where or at least I kind of think about the fact that I am where I'm supposed to be. And I can't always figure out how I got here, but to kind of give a little bit of a history, I went to undergrad in Boston and really had no idea what I wanted to do. I was an athlete, I was running track, was very focused on that. I was thinking about maybe doing bobsledding after school, and I wasn't really sure what was going to happen. And kind of on a whim, I took the LSAT, trying to keep my options open, and ended up spending some time working at a charter school in Boston, which was an amazing opportunity. Loved working with the kids, but wasn't really the fit for me. And I ended up applying to go to law school. As I think back, I can't really remember the moment that I made that decision, if I'm being completely honest with you. But I ended up back at Boston University, went to law school there, and I had the true fortune of joining the criminal law clinic. And it is probably one of the most defining and formative experiences that I've ever had in my life. And I think that will probably be true if you ask me the same question, in 50 years. Because there's a rare moment where you find yourself doing something and you realize that it's what you're supposed to do. And, I talk to my friends all the time, and not everybody gets to have that moment or hasn't had it yet. And I found myself in the Boston Superior Court as a 2L, standing next to a woman I don't remember what she'd been accused of, and arguing, for her release in front of the judge. And the courtroom was quiet, and there was such an intense and overwhelming feeling in that. And I wasn't nervous. I was hyper-focused on the advocacy. And what really caught me was the feeling of my client next to me, like I could feel her proximity to me. And there was such a transferal of trust and power. And that feeling right there, I think, has kind of explained everywhere I've ended up since then. It truly is. So if I had to kind of pinpoint how I ended up where I am, it's that moment in that courtroom in Boston. But that's kind of, I guess, the best answer I can give to that.
So I get that because I can relate to that. For me, if I am in a high pressure sort of situation and you can't, first of all, you can't think about yourself. It's no longer about you. And if the cause is big enough, it's bigger than you, then I think that's when you rise to the occasion. I think that's when you feel the most alive, right? And I think that's an addicting feeling. I mean, I think that's called passion, and I think people that go through law school and kind of go through the motions and don't have that moment sometimes end up being lost for a while, until they're hit with something, as overwhelming as that feeling. And I meet unhappy lawyers all the time, by the way, so I kind of know. I'd be like, I wish I could take back all the time I went to law school and now I'm stuck. But I know a passionate attorney when I see one, and you certainly have that quality. Did you, when you were in law school, I mean, obviously what was your undergrad?
I was you can probably hear my dog licking her bowl. Stop. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I have a 2-year-old boxer who is, I'm just destroying a bowl of water next to me right now. But
well, usually I have a 2-year-old son that's screaming around the house. And I tell everybody that it's my kid. So I totally don't worry.
I completely get it. I listen to all these podcasts who, at least during the pandemic, they talk about how they're like sitting in their closet trying to record their episode. Right. And now I kind of get it. But I studied international relations when I was in undergrad. And I actually did 5 years at Boston University because I was running track. And I redshirted a year, which means I had an extra year eligibility. And so I kind of got to decide what I wanted to do for my 5th year. And I've always loved to read. I've loved to read. And so I ended up getting my master's in African American literature, kind of my 5th year that I was there, which was just an amazing opportunity, an incredible time, And it's interesting that I did that before I went to law school because it was probably the most writing that I'd ever done in my my education. It was just in the library constantly reading, writing, and creative writing. It was a really cool experience, and I think in some ways, as I think back, it's kind of played into the way that I write, think, and read. At least in the context now. So yeah.
So I have a degree in international relations.
So my claim to fame is I was one class behind AOC at Boston University in the international relations department, which is probably the coolest thing that I could say about my international relations degree. But it was it was really cool. It's the liberal arts degrees are useful, and you never really know exactly where you're going to end up going with them. But I'm a history buff, and so it was a good time. Yeah,
that's awesome. I enjoyed my time, and I didn't know exactly what I was going to be either. I thought I was going to go to law school, but I was a mom very young, and so I didn't get an opportunity. But I thoroughly enjoyed my education, and coming from Eastern Europe and sort of being, always thinking I wanted to work for the UN, or I wanted to do something in foreign policy. I thought that was the path. But even though it didn't lead to any of that, I still very much enjoyed really getting into the history piece and actually learning a lot from the Western perspective, because I got my early education back in Eastern Europe. So I kind of got to see both sides. It was interesting. How was it working for Miami-Dade Public Defender's Office? You were there for 3 years?
Just over 3 years. Yes, I started I moved to Miami from Boston in 2017. Mm-hmm. And then I started with the Haggard law firm in November of 2020. So just over 3 years. And it was, so I took that job on a leap of faith. I moved to Florida from the Northeast, which is like moving from, I don't know, Alaska to, and just a completely different experience. And it was one of the best decisions that I've made. I don't know how many times I can say that something was the best decision on the podcast, but those were the two. Those were the two things. But it was one of the best decisions that I ever made. And when you want to work in public defense, every county in the United States has an office. All the big cities have offices. I was drawn to the Miami office because of the intensity and the passion and the client-centeredness of it. And it's so incredibly trial focused, and it's trial focused, not on a attorneys want to get trials to learn skills level, but on a utilitarian kind of platform that is the greatest good for the greatest number of clients, because strategically you can just overpower the system, by pushing those cases to trial, by advocating for your clients, by letting your clients have their day in court. It not only gives a voice to your clients, but the system, in the way it's designed, with its many flaws that we probably don't even have time to digress into today, it really can't sustain, that type of a practice of attorneys coming in and everyone wanting to try their cases. And, it results in a lot of acquittals. It results in a lot of dismissed cases, and it sends our clients home, whenever we can. So it was a amazing experience. I couldn't be more grateful for the time I spent there, what I learned there, the skills that I picked up, the clients that I met, the colleagues and the mentors that I had. It's changed my life for sure.